You're here! Did you get here after your Content Standards module and you're ready to put those unpacking skills into action? Well, if not, I hope you go back and watch the TWC Content Standards module after this one so that you can really become a lesson planning superstar. In either case, I want you to know that I'm sincerely glad you're here now, and I hope that your next few minutes with me will be time well spent. Since the beginning of time, teachers have been making lesson plans. Well, maybe not for millions of years, but surely for hundreds of years, educators have been coming up with activities or lectures inspired by textbooks or curriculum guides of some sort. Maybe the lesson plans have been inspired by what has worked in the past and seemed worth repeating year after year. Sunday afternoons can be pretty predictable for many teachers as they throw open the plan book or open up a template on their computer and fill in the blanks with selecting a topic, finding some engaging activities, and coming up with what the students should learn. Oh, and don't forget about the content standards. Be sure to plug those in somewhere. You'll find a quiz or some way of checking to see what the students have learned, maybe an essay. It's indeed important for teachers to prepare ahead of time so that they know what they're going to do in the classroom for and with their students. Does this approach to lesson planning sound familiar to you? What if I shared with you a more effective way to make your plans? What if I could show you a planning process that could provide better learning opportunities for your students? What if I could show you a way for your students to gain more understanding and see more purpose in what was going on in your classroom? Yeah, what if? What if you could answer these student questions? 1. Why are we learning this? 2. When will I ever use this again? And 3. So what? What if you started with these questions? Why are we doing or learning this? When will I ever use this again? So what? What if you began lesson planning with a way to answer these questions before the students even ask them? To answer the student questions in the last slide, I offer you the backward design in lesson planning. By starting with these questions, students see purpose in what you're teaching and what they're learning. If you anticipate these student questions, you'll be starting at the end. Very simply, with the backward design, you start with what you want the students to know and what you want them to be able to do. Then decide how you will know what they have learned. Lastly, think of activities and learning experiences to make it all happen. By taking this approach, you'll very likely cut down on student frustration and confusion about why they are learning what they're being asked to learn. I might comment here that in adult education, we frequently encounter students who walk through the door of our classrooms already frustrated and confused. This backward design may be a way to soften those feelings and lead them to an effective learning experience. The backward design for lesson planning is not a new idea. A man by the name of Ralph Tyler thought of the idea in the late 30s and published a book notating his theory in 1949. Then, in 1998, along came Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe, who published the book Understanding by Design, to offer an in-depth explanation of backward design lesson planning. Now they're considered to be the experts in training teachers with this not-so-new idea of lesson planning in a backward sort of way. Stay with me as I explain some of what they discovered and what they suggest. First of all, let's take a look at what Wiggins and McTighe call the twin sins. I'm talking about the activity-oriented design of lesson planning and the coverage design. The activity-oriented design is hands-on, but not necessarily minds-on. It is fun, but without clear purpose. This type of lesson planning often lacks a connection between the activities that you plan and the actual learning that you want to happen. Students can walk away from the fun wondering what the activity had to do with what they were reading about earlier. The coverage design takes the approach of marching through the textbook page by page. This design attempts to cover all the material in a certain period of time. It's sort of like that old movie, If This Is Tuesday, It Must Be Belgium. There's not a clear purpose for doing or learning something. It's simply time to do it, and you don't want to get behind. I'm hoping I'm not the only one who can identify with one or both of these methods. The backward design requires teachers and curriculum writers to have an important shift in thinking. You need to think about the learning goals and how you will know the students have learned them. Then, think of the learning activities you will use to get the student to the goal. You must keep your eyes on the destination. There are 3 stages to using the backward design to plan lessons. The steps are: 1. Identify the desired results. That would be your goals. What exactly do you want your students to be doing at the end? 2. Determine acceptable evidence. Your assessments. And 3. Plan learning experiences and instruction. The class activities, of course. Come and let's take a closer look at these 3 stages. The first stage of the backward design is to look at what we want the students to know and be able to do at the end. We're looking at the goals that we're headed toward. Remember those content standards that we learned how to unpack? Well, this is the place that will examine our content standards and curriculum expectations. The first stage of planning should be to look at where we're going to end up. Stage 2 is to determine acceptable evidence. We're talking about assessment here, and you will need to think like an assessor before designing your lessons. Before creating your activities, decide how to determine what attaining the desired outcomes looks like. You need to decide what proficiency looks like. In another module, we'll chat about assessment rubrics, and that should really help with this stage of the backward lesson planning. In short, you'll first be looking at what you want your students to do, and secondly, you'll be deciding how you will know that they understand the objectives or goals. The last stage in the backward design is to plan and create your learning experiences, activities, and instruction. This is where you will use your creativity to come up with ways to get your students to that learning goal that you decided upon in stage 1. We may have to prioritize our materials because we will most certainly have more material than time. As you break your standards apart and take a hard look at your curriculum guides, you'll need to think of how to guide your students efficiently. This is where you will focus on how to get your students to the understanding level, not just the knowledge level. You'll get to plan the classroom activities that will guide the students on to that understanding. One way of looking at the backward design is like going on a road trip. Before you begin, you look at exactly where you are going. Next, you decide on the most efficient route. Then you pack your bag and go. Maybe backward design is something like coaching a sports team. You look at the goal of playing and winning. You decide what it will look like to be a prepared team. Then you begin with the activities of preparation. Begin with the end in mind. That's one of the habits that Stephen Covey wrote about in his famous book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Is it any wonder that that is also the goal for highly effective lessons as well? I see a lot of similarities between effective business people, coaches, athletes, and teachers. They all need to be goal-focused and know where they're going if they want to succeed. In our case, we need to be very student-focused as well. We need our plans for those students to begin with where we want them to be at the end of the lesson. It's all about goals and what we do with them and how we guide our students toward them. Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe see the backward design as purposeful task analysis. You consider a worthy task to be accomplished and consider how best to get everyone equipped. The change here is to begin to think about the assessment before deciding what and how to teach the lesson, instead of deciding on the assessment after you've created the lesson. Grant Wiggins mentioned this Chinese proverb, and I want to pass it on to you for your consideration. Tell me, and I forget. Teach me, and I remember. Involve me, and I learn. The backward design is a matter of moving your students beyond just getting knowledge and on to understanding. It's going way past mere facts and onto depth within topics and making relevant connections with the real world. Remember, 1. Identify the desired results, the standards or goals. What do you want the students to do or understand? 2. Determine acceptable evidence. Assessments. How will you judge or know that they understand? 3. Plan learning experiences and instruction that will get the students to where you want them to be. I do hope you will give this new, or not so new, approach to lesson planning a try. Who knows where it might lead you and your students? Will you backward design all of your lessons and units this weekend? Well, maybe not. It will take some time. So start with one lesson and steadily add more. As with any new routine, your rhythm will be found eventually, and proficiency and ease will follow. Will you notice a difference in student performance? My guess is that you will, and that just might be your motivation to continue using this lesson planning technique. Well, thanks for stopping by. I do hope you found some useful information here. We'll get together again soon, I'm sure. For now, onward.